Welcome to Bold Agendas, the podcast where we explore topics of strategic interest to business leaders who are guiding their organizations through transformative change. I'm Mimi, your host, and today on Bold Agendas, I'm delighted to be joined by René Sonneveld, a returning guest whose work sits at the intersection of leadership, legacy, and the conversations that most families would rather avoid. René's career spans 4 continents and multiple industries, from global executive roles at Fortune 500 companies to guiding multi-generational family enterprises through their most pivotal transitions. A master certified coach and former CEO, he's helped leaders untangle relational knots, navigate high-stakes succession, and align strategy with identity. He's here to talk with us about his new book, The Elephant in the Family Room: Managing the Complexities of Legacy Businesses. In it, he names the silent threats, unspoken resentments, misaligned values, and emotional blind spots that undermine even the most successful enterprises. It's a candid, practical guide for founders, heirs, advisors, and leaders in any enterprise, family-owned or otherwise, who want to protect not just the business, but the trust that holds it all together. We'll explore the emotional side of leadership that rarely makes it into governance documents, why psychological clarity matters as much as legal clarity, and the tools any leader can start using now to address their own elephants in the room. This is Bold Agendas, when business gets personal, leading through legacy, emotion, and change. Let's get started. René, welcome back to Bold Agendas. I'm so delighted to see you. It's been a while, but I'm really delighted to see you here now with your new book, which we've been anxiously awaiting. So welcome and welcome back and congratulations.
Yeah, Mimi, and thank you so much for inviting me again. I love to be on your show, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too. So, René, I feel fortunate that when I heard that you were writing the book and that it would be published in August of 25, that I got you 4 days before your publish date to come on and talk to us. So I feel kind of special with that. And in addition, I want to remind people that when you were on Bold Agendas the first time, you came on to collaborate with me on an edition that we did on leadership coaching, how to coach leaders, through ambiguity and conflict and transformation, as we develop, high performing teams. So this is a wonderful extension of, your background there and the work that you've been doing both in coaching and advising for multi-generational families, I imagine is where a lot of this work, this context comes from.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned teams. There's so many similarities between what happens in teams and what happens in families. I mean, in a weird way, you could say that the family also very much behaves like a team. So there's definitely a strong line from one to the other.
And maybe we can just, talk about that for 1 minute, René, because I want to make sure that people understand. I had introduced you with your background as, prior business person, CEO, master coach, but I didn't go into some of the team coaching that you do outside of family business coaching. Can you take a minute to just describe that? Because I do agree with you that the interplay of different, essentially, types of teams and different relationships, have a lot of ideas in common.
Yeah. So this is really interesting. I never thought and about becoming a team coach. And now when you hear team coach, a lot of people might confuse that with a sports coach, which is managing a team. And when I think about team coaching, there are 2 things. It's one, corporate teams, that need better alignment, where the positivity and productivity is not as good as it could be in order to become more highly effective. But the same thing obviously happens also with sports teams. And so I work with both corporate teams and sports teams, especially in the space of sports teams of mental performance. And the interesting thing is that again, this was never, I had never this in my view until I was called one day by a coach, technical director of a sports team, and said, René, I want to talk with you. And he said, René, I have a problem to communicate well to those young lads that I'm coaching. And because when we went through trainer school and we trained up to become technical directors or coaches of teams, nobody taught us about about emotional intelligence and about kind of the right way of communicating and so on. So I first started to coach the coaches and of that team. They loved what I was doing. They said, can you please coach some of the leaders in the team? And so I started doing that. And then they said, hey, can you coach the entire team in mental performance? And that set in motion. It was like a snowball, right? Rolling down the mountain, getting bigger and bigger. And I said, hey, there's something really that I love to do here. And it's wonderful in that team environment, especially to work in the space of belonging, which is so
Right.
fundamental in a team for people to feel belong. Something that in a family is inherently present, the sense of belonging. Because you're born under the same roof, or your uncles and your nephews and your cousins, and you know each other, and you meet for Christmas and so on. So you have that inherently, but in that inherently, there's also so much that then grows apart and it becomes painful. And that's what my book is about. But it
Well,
started
let's
with
talk
with
about
team
that.
coaching. Yeah.
Let's talk about it, René, because I love the name, the elephant in the family room. So give me some background, share some of your background in working with family legacy businesses, that spawned the book.
Well, again, it is something that I stumbled into. Um, I was working as a banker in for some large private banks, and I was working in that realm with large families typically owning businesses. And so very frequently I would travel and be with the families, and sometimes several members of the family sitting in the same room, literally in the family room. And my technical advice to the families was succinct. I mean, I was technically skilled enough to give them good advice, but I felt there was more that they needed from me. They wanted me to address things that were unspoken. So now they had somebody that could open up that space. And intuitively I felt it. I felt that there's a space and there's something more that needs to be opened up. The thing is, I didn't know how to deal with those emotions and those psychological dynamics, because if I would open something, I would ask some really hard questions, maybe, or powerful questions. Maybe that would open some some gaps in the conversation that I would not be able to then help the
Address.
family move
Yeah.
forward with and address it. So that got me highly interested in kind of neuroscience and sociology and high performance sports psychology, all stuff that I studied in order to understand better how those entities, how those groups, how those teams um, can be more effective and work together in a better way. And that set me up in a complete different direction, which is coaching in the end. And I left my corporate career behind because I found this realm so much more interesting. So that's where I am.
And I just want to also say, in addition to getting your book out and published, I think I saw on your LinkedIn page that you recently, received your Master's of Coaching certification. So congratulations on that. That's a lot of work, a lot of hours.
Yes, it is. And had not expected at this stage in my life to work as hard as I do. But I reframed that, and I don't feel that I'm working. I feel I'm voyaging. I'm on a journey which is so exciting. I love it so much. Feel so passionate about it. And when you feel that everything flows, everything becomes so easy. So, I made tons of coaching hours, and it takes time to find clients and to build up
Hmm.
relationships. In the meantime, I wrote a book, and I say this really from a humble space, but as a kind of for me, a big insight is, if you do something that you really feel passionate about, then it doesn't feel like work. And 10,
True.
12 hours a day feels like great. At the end of the
Wise.
day, I have more energy than when I started in the morning, literally,
I think
because I
I
love what
think
I'm doing.
energy is a telltale sign of whether you're doing something that is really working for you or not. Right, Renee. It's kind of interesting. So let me drill down into the book a bit because I think there's so many interesting dimensions that you take of this. It's not a lightweight book, Renee. There's a lot of.
I'm
It's
so
not.
sorry.
You know, it is really substantive. It was honestly not what I expected, but I found it so interesting and so multifaceted in terms of the subjects that you talk about and the issues that you get on the table. So, and one of them, just as a basic idea, is this concept that you bring forward around silent threats to the legacy business and how these silent, almost unspoken issues can end up having, such a huge effect on the business, more so than market forces, something that we might think would have the most impact, on an organization. But in
Of
fact,
course. Uh,
maybe not so much. What did you find there, Renee?
yeah, and just coming back, it triggered a thought with me when you said, "Well, this is not a lightweight book." Um, I've no experience with writing books, right? So I found, I was very fortunate to find a great book coach, and so I asked her, a business book, how many pages, and she said, well, probably 180 pages. That's kind of what modern business books are. And I started writing, and I couldn't get my point across with 180 because this is so dimensional, this space of family business coaching. So it became 400 pages. My apologies to the readers, but that's what I felt was necessary to bring this really alive, and to go deeper in some of the topics which are so important for families, those silent threats that you spoke about.
Yeah.
And indeed, so this is the thing we do. We all do it in one or another way. So for families and their family business, it's easy to talk about markets, right? It's talk about marketing plans and about ROIs, right? It's a distraction of what's really going on to make this sustainable. And so markets, they are visible, they're measurable, right? And at a certain degree, they are predictable. But the silent threats, they hide in relationships. And this is a kind of a big distinction between a publicly quoted company and a private company, a privately owned company. In a public company, you can have those silent threats in relationships. I do not align well with this colleague or that colleague and whatever, and that colleague can be sent to the branch in Alaska, or he's made redundant in organizations. Well, in families, it doesn't work like that, right? You can't really make redundant your cousin because maybe he owns as many shares as you have. So these silent threats in families, they are, if you want to build a sustainable multi-generational business, you have to understand them and you have to resolve them. And that's hard because it's so much easier to talk about whatever, a new bond issue for the company, or how we're doing in NASDAQ, right? These these silent threats, they erode the decision quality and the commitment and resilience from the inside out. And if you do not address it, if you do not go into the hard conversations, then you lose the control of the business. And in the corporate, let's say the non-privately owned corporate world, there's another way of resolving those conflicts. I mean, ideally, also you talk about the elephants, but very often people escape that, and they take different types of actions. In family, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I clearly agree with that. But Renee, the other thing I would observe in having, gone through the book is that even though, it's clearly founded in these legacy businesses, there's still excellent lessons to be learned and applied here in public and private enterprise as well, because of the the relational dynamics that we're talking about and issues like belonging. Belonging is a huge discussion in corporate culture these days. So, I was fascinated by the information and stories of family businesses. I personally don't work with them. So, it's kind of a greenfield idea to me, which was so interesting. But I also found a lot of application, I think, for business leaders, in any context woven throughout the book.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. That thought, I fully agree with that, and especially in modern leadership, where the word servant leadership is something that comes much more frequently. Um, where a sense of vulnerability is allowed in organizations, where it's much less about control and command type of leadership. There's also much more openness to address kind of the soft issues that are
Yeah.
underlying the hard issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. You see it all over the place now. So René, you've had the interesting opportunity to work with these family businesses kind of all over the world. It isn't in just one continent that your clients, tend to be. And I wonder if you find that there are patterns that exist in these businesses that transcend cultures and geography. Like, what are these common issues if, in fact, they really do repeat themselves commonly everywhere?
Yeah. Um, it is really interesting. Somebody asked me last week. I said, "So René, tell me about the four elephants." And I said, "What? What do you mean four elephants? There's no one mentioning of four elephants in my book." And she said, "Yeah, your publicist they sent us the press brief, and it talks about the four elephants." So I sent a message to my publicist that, "Hey, I love this angle of four elephants. I really find it a very interesting idea, but where did it come from?" So we had a conversation about that, and I was sitting on it this last weekend, and indeed, there are kind of some main topics that come out in which is human, which is part of our humanity, and it doesn't matter if it's Japan, Germany, or the United States, right? You find it everywhere, and it is all about unresolved conflicts, right? Kind of, um, he said something and the other person understood it another way. That can be in any culture. Maybe some things are more sensitive in Japan than they are in the United States, and maybe things are set in a different way in Germany. Doesn't matter. It's an unresolved conflicts. Then you have the unspoken expectations that everybody has. Everybody builds a set of expectations about life. Everybody. Doesn't matter where you are, how rich you are, how well educated you are. You have unspoken expectations. And they cause conflicts because people, very often, they do not know how to tune in those expectations of others. And then you have the shifting power dynamics that you find in all cultures. Dad is getting older. What are we going to do with the company? Well, in our culture, it should be the oldest son, whatever, right? Well, that doesn't work anymore because all those kids, they went to study in Harvard, MIT, Chicago, and they have a complete different worldview from what was in the past, right? So there's some big emotional undercurrents that come back in any environment. And then of course you have the pure human emotions like greed and the big ego or shame or guilt. You know, everybody everybody feels them.
You know, um, the power dynamics that you mentioned, I think it's interesting the way you classified those. I think the power dynamics that you mentioned is one that I wanted to zero in on. I would imagine that that would cover this idea of, the shifting power from the foundational members of the family to the rising generations, right? Renee, that's got to be a common idea. It's what we could look at in enterprise as succession planning without a lot of that baggage, right? So, so give me some insights into that. What have you learned, happens and needs to be dealt with in succession planning in these businesses? And what are the obstacles? What are some of the elephants in the family room that, are associated with that idea?
Yeah. Well, one of the things is that founders, the majority of the founders of companies, or let's say the patriarchs, maybe the inheritors of companies that have been managing it for and making it grow for the last 30, 40 years, they don't want to let go. It's a recurring thing. They don't really want to let go because the kids are not ready for it. I'm talking about founders that are 75 years old. The kids, they're 45, 50 years old. They had a great career either in the company outside company, another company, or within the family firm. They went to the best universities. They did follow-up courses and whatever. And the founder doesn't want to let go because they're not ready for it. And obviously they're ready to take it over, but there's this angst, this fear that the founders have of becoming irrelevant, of losing purpose in life, because the company was their life. And on the family table, the conversation was around the company. That was their vision of life and their responsibility and their drive and the commitment and so on. And now to let go, it's so hard for them. And that's something that is a recurring theme, and you find it everywhere.
And how do
And
you
then there,
deal with
yeah,
that,
sorry.
Renee? I mean, so I would think that would be, as you said, common and so difficult. So when you're advising, the family leaders, how do you deal with situations like that as a coach, as an advisor?
Yeah, so I try really to be out of the advice scheme, especially when it goes um, about business succession. The reason why is these people are very smart. All they have great advisors. They have their lawyers. They have their accountants. They have their whatever wealth managers. They very often they have a big family office with very capable people managing that, and so on. So they don't need more advice. They don't need more technical advice. They need awareness of where this will lead to. And that's my job, is to help them to create deep awareness of how their attitude, of how their being in the family affects the whole system. And so I have deep conversations with the founders or with the patriarch. They're my number one. Um, for the kids, it's very clear. We are ready. We
Right.
want more responsibility. That should enjoy. Why, we have all the wealth. Why doesn't he enjoy more of life? Why doesn't he take mom on a world cruise? Whatever, right? We can do this. So they are ready, they are clear. But it's the founder often that stops it. He wants to hold on. And so a lot of my conversations are not about advice. It's much more about kind of trying to understand what are the adaptive challenges that the patriarch is dealing with. What holds him back
So
from
it's this
really letting
awareness and
go?
getting it on the table, right, Renee? Like getting it on the table for discussion. So it's almost I feel like what you're saying is there's all kinds of governance systems that are in place, legal governance, financial governance, etc. And this area of emotional governance, in the family is a bit more of a way to describe your focus. Is that a fair characterization, or what do you think?
I think it's brilliant. It's emotional governance. It's not a word that I think I've ever used. So you bring that up, and I think it's an amazing insight that you bring here to your podcast. And indeed, it's exactly that. It's emotional governance.
Yeah, that's what it
That's
sounds
that's
like.
what I'm doing. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So this emotional governance is kind of that space where we discuss the emotional realities without kind of that it affects the business. You know, do you understand that you staying on how that affects your children, right? Emotional. And
Exactly.
um, so I love actually this as a this idea of emotional governance. Indeed,
I think you should
that's it.
take that and own it, because I
Yes,
I really think
I will put
that's
a
I
copyright
know.
behind it.
I, it's yours.
Thank you.
Because it really is this hidden emotional drivers, right, Renee? That's really what we're talking about. What are these hidden emotional drivers? And I wonder, I come from a big family myself, so I'll put this on the table even without a family business. These ideas, I would think they would be very dicey, sibling rivalry, the fear of irrelevance. Oh my, fear of irrelevance would be a big idea. The the founder losing relevance, but unequal or unequitable relevance among the siblings or family that would be rising as well, right, Renee? That's got to be a big and painful issue.
And it is. I understand the founder's pain, because also stepping out, you know, it's like dying a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it is very, very painful to take distance. And that's why you need to build in systems to help these founders, slide into their, let's call it, retirement, and still be meaningful. They can be great mentors. They can be great, board members or chairman of the board. They can be great coaches
Give
to
them a
their
bridge. Give them a
children.
bridge, Renee. Give them a bridge to move from here to there, as opposed to a door out.
Absolutely. And it should never be. The door out doesn't work. You're not going to make redundant your father or your mother or your uncle. You don't do that, right? You don't fire them, which happened, right? I mean, we know public disasters where this literally happened, where the father was just basically sent away. But in families, you don't do that, right? And you try to create purpose, so you can enjoy the presence of the patriarch, but from a different realm. But it needs you know awareness, and it needs deeper understanding of the importance. Why is this necessary? And very often founders don't see that.
Renee, I think I've known you for a little over a year now. And to make sure people know, I said it in our first podcast, you and I met in coaching classes, where you were one of my leadership coaches, and wonderful. And it just seems to me, Renee, that there's a river that kind of runs through you as I see you, and the work as I understand that you do, and that I also experience. And that is, you're a person that does a lot of work in this, from conflict to alignment. And you have a beautiful temperament for it. You really do. So this, from a conflict situation into a harmonious alignment situation, I feel that that's something that you do beautifully. I really mean that in all sincerity. And I've recommended you as a coach to many, many an enterprise as well. So I think anybody would be fortunate to get the benefit of your work in this space. My question is, when you did the book, how much research was required? Renee, what did you end up having to go get research on that overflowed, from the boundaries of your experience, or that you just wanted to do for credibility in the book?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I didn't realize how much research actually I needed.
Oh,
And so I also didn't know that I was going to write exactly this book. I started writing a book about my life, and then I said, this is really interesting. There's some fascinating patterns. I say this humbly about myself, right? Not fascinating, but some patterns came out, and I said, hey, this could take an interesting shape. And well, I found a book coach, and she started working with me. Basically, she said, Renee, the first 70 pages, you can put it in the shredder. Thank you very much. And
ow,
but
ow.
and
It's a little.
it was too much about my story, and it became more of an autobiography than whatever. But I had great fun writing it. It brought up lots of old memories, and so I had great fun with it. But it was not apt for this book. And so then I started writing out of my experience, which was actually pretty easy for me, because I was lucky enough in this in my life past to have crossed so many interesting families and worked in different positions. I worked within family companies at senior level. I've advised family companies. I have coached family companies and so on. So I had a lot of material basically in my mind that I
Right.
could write about. But also, in order for it to become a business book, which not only kind of René says, but you find also kind of technical and academical founding, I need to do a lot of research. So over the last 2 years, I read at least, I already before I read, but I reread at least 50 books. And then I did a lot of academical research, which is nowadays the internet is just amazing. So I took a membership of several platforms where you can download PDFs with several universities, with Harvard, with INSEAD, IMD. I was working at that time as a distinguished executive in resident for the Booth School of Business, so I had a lot of access there to academical research. So I probably read more than 10,000 pages of material
Wow, really a
in
lot more
order
working
to
than you thought. Yeah.
much more to really get it to the level that I felt, okay, I can put my name on this, right? And put it out there because, it's pretty vulnerable. One thing is to write a book for yourself and maybe share it with your family. And another thing is to put something where you put your name and it becomes commercial and it's your bona fides, no? That's
Yeah.
there. So I did a lot of research. I spoke with a lot of people. I interviewed a lot of people, leaders in this field of family governance.
Of emotional governance.
No, family governance. Uh, I didn't know the word emotional governance. It just
Just trying to help you brand it. That's all.
absolutely.
Renee,
I Okay.
our
Quick note to my telephone: change website name.
our um our viewership is always interested in some of the seminal moments, the little case studies. What could you share about some of these pivotal moments where you feel addressing these issues with the family leadership team really made a difference? Are there a couple of you know um of examples in your mind? I'm not asking you obviously to give specifics in terms of
Yeah.
people, but ones that help illustrate the idea.
Yeah. So big light bulb moments. I had so many, um, and that's kind of wonderful, where it all clicks. And one I had not so long ago is where I worked with a family and actually we brought in order to open and do something different in an offsite, we brought in a somatic specialist. So a person that connects your emotions to your feelings, to your body, to your sense of body through breathing exercises and other types of exercises. And doing that, it was kind of a bit of, this was not a family that yoga or meditation is a part of their tribal ritual. And so it was a bit of a risk, but what came out, the tension that came out, the stress that people knew how to express because they liberated that from their body was amazing. And they brought us into the room and it was kind of, I didn't know that, right? Um, the For example, in this family there was kind of one older son who was kind of the golden boy in the organization, but not because he felt the golden boy, but he was always kind of by the other senior family members considered the golden boy. While one of the women working in the organization always felt that whatever she did was not good enough, and she felt she was walking in the shadow of, let's call it, the golden boy. And but everybody was kind of doing this out of a sense of whatever they perceived as positive, but they didn't know the pain that was causing her. And she could liberate that and bring it up. And the people said, gosh, we didn't really realize that. And literally there was a lot of crying. We are so sorry. This was never the intention. And we always thought what we do is from a, is for good, for something for good, right? For force of good. And when she could bring that out through her somatic experience, and she could bring that to the table, she, for the first time, she could voice what she was really feeling. She could express that. It changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great story. René, I think that in the short period of time that I've known you, and even in the way you describe, your own journey and the choices that you made, places you left in order to pursue totally different, directions. I think you're a pretty purposeful person. What are you hoping, people take away from the book? What is it that you'd like to think in terms of impact or outcome or just residual?
Yeah. So one part of my practice is working with these large family systems, but obviously also I work with executives and other folks. Um, my purpose at this moment in my life, at this stage, is helping people to live the experience that life gives us better, to really enjoy that, to enjoy the experience, to enjoy the journey that they have. I'm not talking about living frivolous, right? But being more grounded, living more, as Eckhart Tolle says, in the now. And all these stresses, all these elephants, whatever, there are huge interferences in people to really live as a whole. And that's kind of, I feel very, very strongly about also my own life and for my own family, right? And so if I can, and now I don't want to sound tacky or whatever, but if I can help a little bit um, to improve that, um, then I think mission accomplished for me in here at this on this in this journey on the earth.
So that makes a lot of sense to me in knowing you, René. And where do you go from here? What's on the near horizon?
So the near horizon, well, I have my book launch next week, and I'm very excited about that. And I have some interviews pending. I've been invited to write some guest articles in some magazines, and so um, I'm dealing with that. Then I want to build this out. I want to develop a course around this
Oh,
topic.
fun. Great.
Um, I I'm and actually I got this writer um, itch, and so I'm writing a novel now based on also kind of my experience as a person. And kind of a drama, crime type of novel, but a bit of kind of the elephants in rooms, and how this coach stumbles into situations. It's about a coach stumbles into situations and how he gets drawn into the situation, and now he doesn't know how to get out, and
Little
how
entangled
to fix
himself.
that and so on. Yes. So I that's my next project, is to write a novel.
Well, it really is all about energy, isn't it? I mean, at the point that, it's feeding your soul, it does have a way of being self-sustaining.
Well said.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can I get the recording of this podcast, because I didn't have time to write notes, but yes, absolutely.
I
That's
absolutely will. We'll make sure that you get that. And just a couple of things with the book coming out in 4 days. I wanted to get your permission to do a book review of your book for you, because I would love to do that. I kind of selectively review different works and occasionally have the authors on. So if that's okay, I would love to do a review of the book and get it out for you. That would be fun for me.
Thank you so much. Yes, I mean, absolutely.
I would love to. And, I hope you'll come back and talk to us maybe this time next year or so, after you've had year of, the book out and published, and then the activities associated with that. I imagine there'll be things you're not even imagining now that will kind of spawn off of those activities, and that should be fun. And we'll see where you are with your next work of art.
Yeah, I'm really curious about this journey. It's a new one, another one on the bucket list,
Good for
and
you.
well, happy to come back next year. I enjoyed talking with you, Mimi. So
It's always fun to
thank
see
you.
you. So René, you keep in touch with us, and we're gonna follow you from afar in your journey, and wish you the best as always. And thanks for taking the time to talk to our audience. I know they'll be thrilled to hear what you had to say, and to pick up the book. I it's a longer read than what you expected, but it's well worth it. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much,
Okay, I'll
Mimi.
see you soon.
A pleasure.
You take care,
Bye bye.
hon.